Craig Rideout, a father of 7, was brutally murdered by his own family members. Craig Rideout grew up in Pittsford, New York, a peaceful suburb of Rochester known for its farms and horse stables. He and his sister Robin were born 18 months apart, sharing a strong bond as children. Although they drifted apart during high school, they reconnected after Robin returned to Rochester following her time at college in Vermont. A few years after Craig graduated in 1988, he crossed paths with a young woman named Laura Assam in a Rochester pub. The encounter marked the beginning of a significant chapter in Craig's life. In January 1993, Craig and Laura got married when he was 27 and she was 22. Just months later, in October of that year, their family grew with the arrival of their first child, Colin. Craig's career as a programmer in the financial services company provided a steady income. However, as their family continued to grow, finances became a pressing concern. With a total of 7 children, the Rideout household was bustling with financial crises. Craig noticed their finances were tight and advised Laura to be mindful of their spending. However, Laura was confident that their financial situation was better than Craig thought. She didn't take his concerns seriously and believed he was keeping money from her. Craig's response to his increasingly troubled home life was to keep calm and immerse himself in role-playing video games behind closed doors. As time passed, Laura's frustrations grew and she began to drive a wedge between Craig and their children. The strain on their marriage reached a breaking point in the late summer of 2014. It was then Laura filed for divorce. She moved in with Paul Tucci, a close family friend of Craig's, who had recently lost his wife. Laura and Paul's relationship grew more than just friendship when Paul's wife died and she started having an affair with him. It was a heart-wrenching situation, with Laura leaving him for a close friend, robbing her sister and others who knew Craig during the difficult time. They describe a man whose world falling apart. He showed remarkable strength, was determined to keep his chin up, and displayed fewer emotions.
It came known to him that he would be getting divorced. He actually sent out an email to his closest friends, knowing that it would be much more difficult to have an individual phone call with each person. And he prefaced that by saying, "It's official, I'm going to be getting divorced." And he was crushed.
Laura and the eldest son, Colin, accused Craig of being emotionally abusive, but Robin argued that, if that were true, he wouldn't have gained custody of the 2 youngest children of the 7, aged 6 and 12 at the time. Juggling a full-time job and suddenly becoming a single parent, Craig turned to Robin, a mother of 4, for advice. Their communication became more frequent after Laura left, forming a crucial support system for Craig during this trying period. For the next 2 years, Robin observed her brother's relationship with his estranged wife deteriorate further. On one occasion, Craig voiced his concerns to his attorney about Laura's inconsistent behavior, which included missing scheduled pickups, unannounced visits, and even having Colin, their eldest, drive the younger children to school and appointments. In the early summer of 2016, tensions escalated to a new level of acrimony. Laura and Tucci hatched a plan to relocate to North Carolina and intended to take the youngest children with them. This decision was met with fierce objection from Craig, who sought to maintain custody. Colin, siding with his mother Laura, plotted an incident that would cast Craig in the light of an abusive father, hoping it would bolster Laura's chances in the custody battle. To further manipulate the situation, Colin went so far as to send text message to his younger siblings, urging them to provoke Craig and even advising them, "Don't forget to call 911 if he's ever screaming, because that would play well in court." However, Craig's inherently kind nature proved to be a formidable shield. Despite their efforts, they couldn't provoke him to the point of losing his temper. One fateful night, Craig was abruptly roused from his sleep by an intruder in his Penfield townhouse. This intruder brazenly plucked a hair from his arm and stole his house keys and work-issued BlackBerry. Instinctively, Craig dialed 911 to report the theft. However, he had his suspicion that the intruder was none other than Colin.
My name's Craig Rideout. What happened? I wake up at midnight with a sharp pain in my arm. I jump up. This will sound crazy. A hooded black figure, not a black man, was running out of the room. The reason I have to file a police report is my BlackBerry, which was taken that night.
Robin and Craig had their final conversation on the evening of July 17, 2016, around 7 p.m. Their discussion centered on Alex, their third oldest son at 19. Earlier that day, Alex had taken to Facebook to vent his frustrations, crafting a lengthy post where he accused his father, Craig, of manipulating the court system to maintain control over his mother. Craig found the incident shocking and upsetting. He told Robin he decided not to respond to the Facebook post. He would raise the matter in a slightly less public setting, the next custody hearing. He thanked Robin for her help and support before they hung up. The next morning, Robin reached out to Craig via email. She grew concerned when he didn't reply. Neither his work phone nor his cell phone yielded any response. This was very unusual for Craig. Worried, she contacted his workplace, only to learn that they had received an email from him the night before. It read, "My daughter remains ill. I may not be able to answer the phone as I will probably be taking her to the doctor's office." Robin knew it didn't sound like her brother. During her lunch break, consumed by worry and confusion, she drove to her brother's townhouse. The sight that met her was nothing short of shocking. Inside the house was Laura, diligently wiping down a kitchen counter. This was entirely out of character for her. What puzzled Robin even more was the fact that, according to the custody order, Laura was expressly prohibited from being in Craig's home. It simply didn't add up. Laura cleaning a house she had no right to be in. When Robin entered the kitchen, Laura quickly informed her that she had been searching for Craig. She mentioned that the two children who were currently under his custody needed to be picked up for school. Laura went on to explain that she had taken it upon herself to clean the kitchen due to an unpleasant smell. Robin did her best to maintain a composed facade, attempting to make sense of Laura's words and actions, even though they seemed inexplicable. As Robin hurriedly scanned the house for any sign of Craig, she couldn't help but notice all 3 pairs of his shoes arranged near the front staircase. Eventually, the two women departed together. Laura appeared visibly unsettled, carrying a trash bag tightly in her hands, adding an air of further mystery. Robin wasted no time and called 911 to report her brother missing. On that very same day, some 50 miles away, a farmer was pedaling along a quiet rural country road when his attention was drawn to 2 cars parked at the side. He spotted 2 figures nearby. Hours later, when he returned to the spot, the cars were gone, but a lone shovel stood as a curious sentinel. Intrigued, he went into the nearby woods and made a grim discovery. There lay the body of a man in a brown plastic tarp. Shortly after, deputies arrived at the scene. The face of the deceased was so disfigured by the corrosive effects of liquid lightning drain opener that identification seemed impossible. A ringing phone shattered the silence. It was the same prepaid phone Craig had acquired after his BlackBerry was stolen. On the line was his concerned sister, Robin. With her call, police now knew the identity of the victim, for Craig had been recently reported missing. The police conducted a thorough search of the house. In the basement, they discovered blood spatters. Among the grisly findings was a bag concealing a garrote. Instead of strangulation, Craig's neck was cut deep, explaining the blood spatters. The autopsy showed Craig suffered a severe beating, was strangled, and had his face and fingers exposed to a liquid drain opener. Despite attempts to conceal his identity, dental records confirmed who he was. Security cameras captured footage of Craig's car on the route where his phone was last traced, leaving his home. Alongside his vehicle was Paul Tucci's car, a key figure in the unfolding story. Just a day after Craig's body was found, police received a call from someone who said that 2 young men were throwing big black bags into the lake called the Devil's Bath. Those 2 young men were 2 sons of Craig, Alex and Colin. Police then arrived at the scene.
You and your brother were out for a walk?
Basically, we were just like out, and then suddenly people show up, and it's like, well, that's...
In the bags were liquid drain opener, bloody clothes, and gloves. Alex and Colin were then arrested. Laura was also arrested. Craig's car keys were found in Laura and Paul's house. Police unveiled a video showing Laura and Colin entering a store, in which Colin purchases liquid drain cleaners. In a second video, just a few hours before the murder, Laura came back with Paul Tucci, buying some drain cleaners and a brown tarp that wrapped around Craig's body when he was found. Whereas Colin was seen buying a shovel and gloves at a different store. On September 6, 2016, Paul Tucci was also arrested for evidence tampering. After 4 full days of deliberations, the jury has rendered its verdict in the murder trial of Craig Rideout. The jury found Craig's estranged wife, Laura Rideout, guilty of second-degree murder, tampering with evidence and burglary. Craig's son, Colin Rideout, was found guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. Alex Rideout, also Craig's son, was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of tampering with evidence. Paul Tucci, Laura's boyfriend, was found not guilty of both murder and tampering with evidence. Paul Tucci's release from charges added a layer of controversy to the already complex case. Detectives in the prosecution maintained their belief that Paul played a role in Craig's murder, despite the legal outcome.